You're listening to Head Voice, bringing you inside the minds of the best in contemporary a cappella. I'm Evan.
And I'm Kayla. And this week we had Sam Robson on. Sam's a YouTuber from the UK, and he's known for his elaborate a cappella arrangements. During this episode, we talked about his arranging process and the inspiration he has behind some of his videos.
Sam's been involved in a ton of different projects, Vade a cappella, Kindred Quartet, Beatvox, to name a few. You can find links to all of those different groups and to any collaborations or people that have been mentioned in the episode in the show notes on SoundCloud by clicking Show More and on the podcast app by clicking the album art. This is the first episode for Head Voice that we are going international, so if you have any suggestions for people you'd like to see from overseas, please don't hesitate to send that to us on our Facebook page or Instagram. And without any further ado, this week's episode of Head Voice.
Hi, Sam. Thank you for joining us on Head Voice today. We're so excited to have you on. You're our first person from out of the country, so we're really stoked about that. I'm just going to ask first off, just a general question. How did you sort of start your musical career? What kind of launched you into music?
I'd probably give a lot of credit to family because I think it was my mother who threw me into piano lessons at like age 9, 10. And then from that also got me involved with projects or Saturday centres and Trinity College and stuff like that back when I was in high school. So yeah, I give a lot of credit to those guys for starting me off with the foundation of education and knowledge.
Yeah.
So you've been making YouTube videos for a while now, since 2008. You're up to 90 videos on there. What got you started doing that? Because clearly, there'd been some things going on musically before that, but what inspired that and what's kept you doing it till today?
It's a good question. I mean, I started out even before YouTube, just being a guy that plays in bands, drums, guitar, rock music, heavy stuff. But then, I don't know, I think, again, like classic YouTube to just come in and show you stuff that you would never, without it, would never have stumbled upon. Like, for instance, I got really into barbershop in the beginning, and I used to transcribe barbershop arrangements and then try and sing them off myself, which in the beginning was pretty rough, but over time, it started to become a thing that I really enjoyed, just multi-tracking myself. And then from that, I wanted to kind of start doing my own arrangements and then being more artistic with it and developing it into something that people would enjoy listening to, or, rather than just like singing off tags and then being 30 seconds long, So, yeah.
So I feel like for anyone who's listening who has not seen Sam's YouTube channel, you should go check it out immediately. But just to give you a general idea, there's every possible video on there. There's original music, there's instrumental, there's a cappella, there's everything. So I'm just curious to know, do you think that you've grown? Well, I'm sure you have grown from the start to the end. So what sort of changes have you seen in your music since you started posting YouTube vids and growing as an artist on there?
I definitely would say that in the beginning I didn't have it easy. Like, I had a lot of people who would criticize my voice or the way I look, or classic internet, trying to destroy you at every angle. But I guess in a weird way, like, maybe what maybe makes me differ in certain regards is I get annoyed, and then I'd be like, oh, that's such a horrible thing to say. But then I'd also be like, maybe they actually have a point, and then like if you break away the layers of the rudeness and break away all the layers and see if there's actually anything substantiative, is that the right word, or substantial in what they're saying. If there is something substantial, and if you get a lot of people saying the same thing, then it's like, maybe there could be some truth in their criticism, and maybe use that to improve. And that's pretty much how I, in the beginning, was able to kind of maybe excel quite quickly from being like a non-singer to someone that can now sing
quite well. I'd also say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, it's weird, you kind of find yourself giving credit to haters. I guess you could put it in a weird way. In the same time, you've got to also give credit to people that support you and also provide constructive criticism or just really humbling opinions. It's like, I love what you do, but what if you tried this? And I'd be like, okay, sounds like a great idea, So that was definitely part of the process.
Right.
Totally. So as I'd mentioned, I've been watching your videos for a while, and it's been interesting to watch that growth that you've kind of been talking about. And
yes.
Kind of, I would say the main videos that you're putting out now on the channel are kind of these very, very grandiose, multi-track, very lush things that you do now, which I think is very unique in the YouTube space, in that, there's a lot of YouTubers doing the multi-track acapella thing, but like the level at which you do it with like the crazy video effects and like these crazy chords and stuff is like very unique. So I was just wondering, they're very big productions. So like, what is kind of the inspiration and process when you're doing arrangements? Are you notating things in sheet music and then performing it, or just doing it by ear?
I mean, the first thing I do is I do the arrangement, and I sometimes use MIDI, but on the whole, I would write it by hand, and I don't go in saying, oh, it's going to be like 6 parts, 8 parts, 10 parts. I mean, this is something I used to do in the past. I used to be going in like, okay, I want to have an 8-part arrangement, and then I'd find myself having to restrict myself all the time.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, it's just become a thing of like, why do I even bother going in saying I want it 8 parts when I could just go in, don't put any restrictions, no time signatures, no nothing, and just write and then see what it chooses to be. So yeah, that's kind of my method as from today.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like just going through your channel, there's a huge variety of different artists and different genre. You have quabs, you have pentatonics, you've done Take 6 songs, you've done hymns, a bunch of different styles. So in that regard, how do you kind of arrange for these different styles? Do you think you do it in a certain way, or it's kind of the Sam Robson way and you just apply it to all the different genres that you're taking on?
I don't know if this will answer the question, but I don't see... I think I don't see genre in the way that I think a lot of other people see it, where it's like a strict linear thing. I think in my head, I see all these different genres of music trying to achieve the same goal, which is just an emotional reaction of some sort. And for me, like, I think the thing that links all my videos is it's striving for the same emotion. It's striving for the same revelation or emotional response or anything that people get from music. I believe you can get it from any genre if you just really take the time to understand the genre that you're listening to. So that's my point on it.
That's very cool. I think if I may, something that you can kind of feel when you're watching your videos is or any project that you've been involved in, is there's kind of like this base level of just like joy and like passion doing it, which I can imagine. Well, actually, I don't know, maybe not, but like when you're putting together, projects of that magnitude and having like however many tracks that is, how do you like keep that energy up as you're, multi-tracking all those videos, tracking all those different tracks and everything?
It's crazy. Like I don't do drugs. I'm just gonna throw that out there. It's just a matter of like keep reaffirming the goal in your mind. It's like, I want people to feel this way when I listen to it. So if I'm recording the vocals or doing the videos, it's I have to be able to snap into that frame of mind.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's kind of I don't know. I guess it's quite a harsh way to look at it, but otherwise I see it as selfish if I don't snap into it. If I don't just get into it. If I'm there like going, in the videos, then it might be a bit, it might be a bit insulting. So yeah, I don't know. I just keep. I guess I put a very harsh, what's the word I'm looking for? Standard on myself, and by doing that, you can get through it.
Yeah.
And but in the end, I do. The end product and watching it back, because when I do the videos, I do a section and then edit it in, and then see where it will go from there, and then I'll do the next section. So sometimes it's like a genuine excitement of knowing that when I put this into Final Cut, it's gonna look this way, and it's gonna be like, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Another thing that I think that at least I get from watching your videos is there's a very live and organic feel to them, despite the fact that it's, you know, a ton of you essentially, which is an inherently unnatural thing.
Yes,
so
I would agree for sure.
I was just wondering what your philosophy is in terms of editing tracks and tuning things and lining things up, because at least in the a cappella industry as it's come to be today, that's kind of the standard, you know, and your tracks don't feel any less professional, but there's a certain life to it. So I was just wondering if you could
thank you. It's a combination of many things. Like in terms of the mixing and the editing, my standard is like, if you can pick out the top line per se, because even within the crazy arrangements, there's still like this kind of, for lack of a better word, like a take 6 structure to it. There's like the top line, the alto, the tenor, baritone, bass kind of thing. That top line will be pitch corrected, and then everything below it will just be my tuning of that line.
Oh, cool.
So my interpretation of a perfectly tuned line will then bring it back to reality. So
you track it and then edit that top line and then track under that. Is that what you're saying?
So I track the top line first. And then I pitch correct that, because the worst thing when layering such a big project is to drift off key. Like the whole thing just drift, because then all the extremes of my range are screwed. I won't be able to hit the high, and I won't be able to get a nice quality of the lows. Because the lows are predominantly fake, but if you have to pitch them down too much, then it sounds ridiculous.
Right.
But yeah, so it's a matter of kind of knowing when to edit and when to just leave things alone. And I think a lot of that has stemmed back from my love of barbershop in the beginning, which is all about pure resonance of chords. Like the thirds are perfect, the fifths are perfect, but you can't necessarily achieve that if you just melodyne and autotune everything. I mean, you can go in and change the sense, but I think it's way better to just be able to kind of visualize what the chord.
Yeah.
Because I also don't sing to a MIDI map. I just start completely lonely and then build it, hoping for the best.
Right.
It works. I get through it. But So it's like you sing in the top line. You have an idea of what the chords are going to be from top to bottom. So the next note you sing in, you have to make sure that that's adjusted, knowing that the next note might then ring with the. I mean, shall I provide like an example of a chord and then just say how I tune it? Or?
Sure.
Cool. Let's see. Oh, that's a classic. So, say if I do like a B flat major 7, I'll sing the F, and so that's the soprano done. The D will have to be all the musical scientists will correct me, but I'll estimate -11. So in my mind, I'm trying to just tune it down, and as you tune it down to fit the perfect third, you know you're doing it right because you start hearing all the notes below start to resonate in your ear, in your skull. So it's like, okay, so I've got that one. So the next one down is the C. So in my mind, I want to ignore the D and sing the C against the F. So there's a perfect fourth running. And then the next one down is the A. So you want to ignore everything else and tune it to the D. So you have a perfect fourth between the A and the D. Wow. The F is then the octave between the top F and the bottom F. So you're just focusing on the F, and then you sing, the Barry F and support the high note. And then the B flat, you just kind of sing it in, and you'll know when it's in tune because it starts to kind of ring. You don't hear the dissonance, and also it's like sometimes you don't even hear your own voice. You just feel it. It's like it just sits in there, and that's how I build a chord. I try and stray from the MIDI.
So that's awesome. How do you do that when you have lines that you're singing? So it's like, here's a chord and then another chord, and you're kind of like, I assume you don't like hit each chord individually.
No, not at all. I will just pick out the most important chords and focus in on those. So if a line goes a certain way, like the first chord and the last chord should be aim for those two, the first and the last chord of that phrase, to be perfectly in tune. And then on the whole, if that's kind of how you approach it, all the other notes in the middle will kind of fall into place.
Interesting.
Naturally, yeah.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
So you talking through this chord just reminded me of how complex your music is. Like the vocals are insane, and there's so much happening, and there's so many different layers in it. And I feel like that's kind of interesting because it contrasts. You do have a lot of instrumental music on your account too, and not even on YouTube, on SoundCloud and everywhere on the internet. So how do you kind of, when you're arranging for voices, how do you kind of take from your instrumental experience and apply that? And in what ways do you apply it, and what ways do you not apply it? And do you do something that's completely different?
To be honest, I've never thought about comparing, because I feel like the a cappella strand of what I do is just so vastly different in the way I have to view it, that when it comes to instruments, I don't know, I guess because being an instrumentalist has been more rooted in my childhood. Yeah. It just, I don't really think about it. I'm just like, oh, piano, blur. Right. Drums. I've been a drummer for ages, so I just play the drums. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. I'm not really sure. I have to think about it.
Well, just to go off that, in some of your videos, you do kind of have these pieces where it's full-on vocals, and then you kind of weave in some instrumentals at some point. For example, in your Kimbra video, which I love, the Withdraw cover, it's mostly vocals, and then towards the end you kind of filter in some guitar and some piano aspects to it. Yes. So with that, or you could use that as an example, or just in general, how do you sort of decide, okay, this is the right amount of instrumental to support the vocals without distracting from it?
I suppose, given that example of the Kimbra, I think definitely at that point in time, I was going through a bit of a phase of like, how am I going to make this, what I do, still sit above the kind of common ground of everyone doing a cappella? Yeah. And one of those ventures was to try incorporating instrumentation. Personally, I think the last thing I did with instruments like that was the Michael Jackson one, and then afterwards, I don't know. I didn't think it really worked out. So I went back to kind of just using the voice purely, and just being more creative with how I distort it in processing and tuning and detuning. Yeah. I find it way more fun with just going back to the voices. Right. Because you pull back away from the equal temperament issue, the mix, the blending instruments and voices issue. But yeah, so I much prefer keeping it separate. Right.
So you, as we've kind of mentioned, you're very prolific in your work. So you have all these YouTube videos, but then you've collaborated on a bunch of other things outside of that. A few of those things being like Kindred Quartet, or when you did some stuff with like the Dons and stuff, a lot of collaborations with James Rose, it looks like, from what we can find. But I think kind of in both of those spaces, you've kind of similarly, in instrumentation and different things, it's been, pure voices or a loop station or a guitar or a shaker in this aspect. So what is your kind of thought process in terms of that collaboration when you're working with other people and kind of, going between different styles of music and working with different voices? Like, how do you approach that?
I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. I think it's just craving different voices and having an outlet for working to people's voices, especially with Kindred Quartet. Like, I love being able to bring an arrangement and not know what it's going to sound like, or be pleasantly surprised by how it sounds, or or just having them come back with ideas and be like, oh, I changed this. And I'm like, I never thought of that. I love that feeling. I definitely get a buzz from that ensemble partnership in that way.
So I'd heard you talk about in the a cappella sphere how you kind of were hoping that groups would take an approach where you can kind of single out each voice more stylistically rather than kind of like this homogenous blending thing. So I was wondering if you could like talk about that and what other things in a cappella that you want to see in that regard.
Well, I think that's the main one. Is I think that there sometimes can be a tendency to want to lose the individual character of a voice. Again, the best example I can give goes back to early Take 6 with Mervyn Warren. Like, if you listen to their live stuff back then, like Spread Love or Sundays on the Way, like you can just it sounds amazing and it sounds like one unit, but like if you really listen to it, you can hear the individual interpretation of each voice, and it's ever so slightly different. But they're musical enough. They're musical enough to keep it together. But like, there's this like just tiny little runs like here and there, or like slight scatting between the lines. I think the best example is Sundays on the Way, and during the chorus with the Mervyn Warren, they live again. Oh, it's great. It's so good. But so I definitely take a lot of inspiration from that kind of mindset. Or I don't. Here's the thing that bugs me is I don't really think, especially in Take 6's case, I don't think they really thought about it that much. I think it was just like it's just a matter of just it felt right to do this.
Yeah.
It felt right to interpret it this way. No one else in the group is bothered by it, so I might as well continue doing it.
Yeah.
And I guess in terms of bringing that back to maybe a studio project, where it's a lot harder to be as bold with that kind of stuff, because you're in a studio situation where everyone's like, are you sure you want that take? Because you're going to have to listen to it for the rest of your life, which is just a stupid philosophy, but whatever. Because you can just re-record it. I don't know. But like, yeah, so it's, and people get shy and they get starstruck in the studio, and then they just give up on their personal interpretation because they feel like they have to provide a quality product. And I think that's great, you know, providing a quality mix and a quality song and recording is great, but then you also have to take that bold step and just kind of not get caught up in the fact that you've probably paid like £1,000 for the studio time. You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
But it's hard, and that's probably why in my case my studio is within my home, so I have free time all the time in the world. No one chasing my tail in terms of deadlines, apart from myself, and I think in that situation I'm able to record in this way where it's not quite as slick. It's or like perfect. It's still. It sounds a little rough around the edges at points, but it's enough to get the picture. The overall picture of the arrangement is there. And I feel like as soon as I hit that point, there's no more editing to be done in terms of tuning or syncing, or it's like it's there, it's done.
Right.
Let's leave it now, you know.
So you were kind of saying how you kind of want groups to focus more on the stylistic tone or the unique sound of each singer, but for you, it's kind of like you're working with just your voice, so that's the only instrument you really have to play with. So how do you sort of keep that in mind when you're making your arrangements in terms of
in terms of in like a 6-part or a smaller arrangement, I'll sing each part slightly differently with a slightly different intention. You know, it's if you want it to sound more feminine up top, then imagine you're a female and sing it like that. If you want it to sound more masculine as a falsetto or top line, you kind of put a bit more bite into it and less air. For example, that's just something that I would do with my voice.
Right.
But in terms of something like maybe Aristocats, I would kind of treat each group of voices as a different section of a big band.
Okay.
So like in the drop of that arrangement where it goes into the up-tempo gypsy section, there's the trumpet. So I have like a section of voices dedicated to the trumpet, and it's all sung in the mask, bright sound. The top octave is a bright head voice. The bottom octave is just a cool chest, classic, loud. And then the next section will be like a section that imitates the guitars and some of the strings. And then there was another section that I just dedicated to just vibe. So it would provide all the kind of like all the interjections of the oboe, or the interjections of any extra strings, guitar, bass, all that kind of stuff will be dedicated to that. So yeah. And then I guess to top it all off, there's the bass section, which is probably about 3 or 4 voices, which is sung and produced with a very hollow dum dum, just no top end, not dum but so you get that separation from everything else.
Right.
You just have this bass sound that just sits in, and obviously afterwards you go through the mix and you separate it even more. But I think it's really important to do the separation yourself before the mixing and before the editing. Right. And it makes me more excited for the overall sound if I kind of do it pre-mixing. If I just have the idea of what I want there before I mix it. Otherwise I could be there for days trying to mix it in a way that is completely off track and not what I wanted initially.
Right. I feel like, just to kind of go off this, I'd imagine it's somewhat hard to find stability in this specific lifestyle when you're doing all different projects and you're trying new things, and one thing is taking off and one thing is kind of closing or finishing. How do you sort of get your musical fix but also survive? I feel like that's a hard pursuit that a lot of people in music are trying to do. So how do you kind of keep yourself stable?
A lot of that I would put down to the luck of having some very poignant viral success with a couple of videos. I need the circle of life. Like, so the messages I get about those 2 arrangements, for whatever reason, is crazy, and I love it. Don't ever stop. But so I felt like it was definitely, especially with I Need Thee in the beginning, because prior to I Need Thee, no one really knew on a big scale like that who I was.
Right.
It was after that things started to get interesting in terms of being asked to arrange for groups, being asked for sheet music, mixing. I mean, it was through YouTube that I even got to meet James Rose as well. So that it's like, and then from that, us together, became more connected with other acapellians, or other acapella people in the world, or in the UK, and and also because of one really interesting thing that has happened post the virality of I Need Thee is getting to know the Seventh-day Adventist people in the UK, and the amount of crazy talent that a lot of those people have, but nobody knows about it. It's like, and I did one video with a group called Vade and these 2 sisters who all have these and James as well, I think, all have these extraordinary voices. In my mind, it was crazy that no one really knew about who these folks were.
Right.
And I thought if I could do anything, anything in my power to kind of shine a little light on some hidden talent.
Yeah, very cool. So we're reaching the end of the episode today, and we typically like to ask 2 questions. One being, what do you kind of envision for the future of acapella? Like, what excites you about what you're hearing today? And then 2, what's on deck for Sam the Man in the future?
Ooh, tough questions. In terms of acapella music today, what I feel like and I'm not attributing this to me or anyone in my circles or anyone what we do, but there's definitely more kind of, I'm noticing more jazzier, more kind of out there arrangements in with certain people and certain YouTubers as well, and I'm like, sweet, that's perfect. Like, just having music that kind of is a little bit more mature and a little bit more, it might take a second or a third listen to really appreciate what's going on, or it takes a 10th listen to be like, oh, I never noticed this bit. You know, I love music where I keep coming back and it's like, I didn't notice this bit before, but now that I do, it's like I now am aware of this one bit that I had no idea existed, but yet was so integral to this song, to this arrangement.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I listen to music for. And I definitely am excited to see that happening with the likes of Jacob Collier and stuff like that, where
Totally.
it's like you can keep coming back to the same song and be like, this is a different song.
Yes. Especially with Jacob's music, I
yes,
feel.
absolutely. And it's really exciting, you know. And well, I'm trying to do a couple more collaborations. I've always wanted to collaborate with Accent, you know, another James Rose classic. but so yeah, I'm excited to collaborate with those guys. I have a couple of other collaborations I want to put in place. It's funny, collaborating with people can be a lot harder in terms of getting stuff done the way you want it, or timings and stuff like that, but I don't care, you know. I have the vision of what I want it to sound like, and if for example, a group like Accent, if I want them to come on my track, then if the vision says so, then I do the vision. So I go with the vision.
Well, that's very cool, and we're super excited to see whatever you come up with in the next coming months, years, whatnot. We're excited to hear more from you. And we thank you very much for joining us today.
No problem.
And we hope that you join us next week for a new episode of Head Voice.